If you can listen to this easily, your English is good enough for daily life in the US. Ready to learn English like a native? Let's get started.
What if you could press a button and rewind your life? Not just your own, but your entire family's story. For 17-year-old Marty McFly, this wasn't just a thought. It became his reality. Marty's life in the town of Hill Valley felt like a song stuck on a sad note. He dreamed of being a rock star, letting his music and his electric guitar do the talking for him. But his dreams always seemed to hit a wall. He and his band, the Pinheads, auditioned for the school dance, pouring all their energy into a power chord rock anthem. When they finished, a teacher with a megaphone looked at them with a tired face. "I'm sorry, fellas," the teacher said flatly. "You're just too loud." It was another closed door. His girlfriend Jennifer was the one bright spot. She believed in him. As they walked through the town square, she held his hand. "One day they'll be sorry," she said, nodding toward the school. Marty just shrugged. He was more worried about his family. "I just don't want to end up like them," he confessed, his voice low. "I'm scared I'll get stuck, just like they are." Just then, a woman with a can asking for donations approached them. "Save the clock tower," she chirped, handing Marty a flyer. The town's historic clock had been frozen at 10:04 p.m. for 30 years, ever since it was struck by lightning. Marty gave her a quarter, stuffed the paper in his pocket, and didn't think about it again. Going home felt like walking into a gray photograph. The house was always quiet, but it was a heavy, sad quiet. At the dinner table, his father, George, barely spoke. He was a kind, gentle man, but he walked through life with his shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow, and usually one came. Tonight, it was a phone call from his boss, Biff Tannen. Biff, who had been George's bully since high school, was now his supervisor. He yelled at George over the phone because George had wrecked Biff's car after Biff had left the keys in it. George just took it, saying, "Yes, Biff." "I know, Biff." Marty's mother, Lorraine, sat at the table with a glass in her hand, lost in the past. She would tell the same stories over and over. "You know, the night of the Enchantment Under the Sea dance was so magical," she'd say, her eyes distant. "Your father was standing up for himself, and he got hit by my daddy's car. It was meant to be." It didn't sound magical to Marty. It sounded like an accident. His older brother and sister were no better, stuck in boring jobs and looking just as tired as their parents. This house wasn't a home. It was a waiting room for disappointment. But Marty had a secret escape. His best friend was Dr. Emmett Brown, a brilliant, wild-eyed scientist everyone in town thought was crazy. Doc wasn't afraid of anything. He had crazy white hair that stood on end and a mind that raced with impossible ideas. Being with Doc made Marty feel like the world was full of amazing possibilities. Late that night, the phone rang. It was Doc, his voice crackling with manic energy. "Marty, you have to meet me at the Twin Pines Mall. It's urgent. Bring the video camera." The mall parking lot was vast and empty under the cold lights. There, Doc stood next to his greatest invention. It was a DeLorean sports car, but it was like no car Marty had ever seen. Wires and vents covered its stainless steel body. Inside, a strange Y-shaped device pulsed with light between the seats. "It's a time machine, Marty," Doc declared, his eyes wide with triumph. He pointed to the glowing device. "This is the flux capacitor. It's what makes time travel possible." He explained that it needed a tremendous amount of power, 1.21 gigawatts, an amount so huge it could only be generated by a bolt of lightning, or a dangerous element called plutonium. To prove it worked, Doc put his dog, Einstein, in the driver's seat and buckled him in. He set the destination time to 1 minute in the future. With a remote control, he sent the DeLorean speeding across the pavement. As it hit 88 miles per hour, there was a deafening boom and a flash of light so bright it hurt Marty's eyes. The car vanished, leaving only 2 trails of fire on the asphalt. A minute later, with another flash, the car reappeared, covered in ice. Einstein was fine. It had worked. Doc was ecstatic. He talked about his plans to see the future, the past, everything. But then their celebration was cut short. A beat-up van screeched into the parking lot. A group of angry men with guns jumped out. They were the ones Doc had tricked to get the plutonium. Before Marty could react, they opened fire. Doc was hit, and he fell to the ground in a heap. Terror seized Marty. His friend, his mentor, was gone. The men turned their guns toward him. His only escape was the DeLorean. He leaped inside, the engine roaring to life. He slammed the car into gear, tires squealing as he tried to get away. The van chased him. He fumbled with the controls, accidentally turning on the time circuits. The digital display blinked to life. November 5th, 1955. He pushed the gas pedal on the floor. The speedometer climbed. 80, 85, 88. The world outside dissolved into a blinding tunnel of light and color. There was a tremendous bang, and then silence. The light faded. The parking lot, the mall, the van, all gone. He was on a dark country road. He had crashed through a wooden fence and into a barn. A farmer with a shotgun appeared, yelling about aliens from outer space. Marty, still wearing the radiation suit Doc had given him, floored it again, blasting out of the barn and leaving a terrified family in his wake. He drove toward the only lights he could see, the town of Hill Valley. But it was a different Hill Valley. The town square was pristine. The courthouse building was new. The cars were big, shiny, and round. The clothes were from a different world. He saw a movie theater playing a film he'd never heard of. In a daze, he found a newspaper stand. The date at the top read, November 5th, 1955. He had not just escaped. He had traveled back in time 30 years. His first feeling was panic. His second was a single clear thought. I have to find Doc. But before he could, he wandered into a small diner. And there, sitting at the counter, was a nervous, awkward teenager. It was his father, George. A moment later, a loud, obnoxious kid and his friends came in. It was a young Biff Tannen who immediately started picking on George, demanding he do his homework for him. "Think, McFly, think!" Biff yelled, tapping George's head. Marty, stunned, followed his father outside. He watched from across the street as George climbed a tree to peek into a girl's window. Marty couldn't believe it. His father was a peeping Tom. Just then, a car came down the street. George, startled, fell from the tree, landing directly in the car's path. This was it. This was the story his mom always told. This was how they were meant to be. But Marty couldn't just stand there. He ran, shouting, and pushed George out of the way an instant before the impact. The car slammed into Marty instead, and the world went dark. He woke up slowly, his head pounding. He was in a dark room. A girl was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching him. "Are you okay?" she asked. Her voice was sweet. Marty's vision cleared and his heart dropped. It was his mother, Lorraine, as a beautiful, hopeful teenager. She thought his name was Calvin Klein because it was written on his underwear, and she thought he was a hero. This was a disaster of a history-changing size. By saving his father, he had taken his place. Now, his mother had a huge crush on him. He had dinner with her family, an incredibly awkward meal where she kept trying to touch his leg under the table. Later, he pulled the family photo from his wallet. The image of his older brother was starting to fade. He was literally erasing his own family from existence. Desperate, he looked up Emmett Brown in a 1955 phone book and went to his mansion. At first, the younger Doc thought Marty was completely insane and slammed the door in his face. Marty knocked again, frantic. "Doc, you have to believe me. I know things. I know you were standing on your toilet hanging a clock. You slipped, hit your head, and when you came to, you had a vision of the flux capacitor." Doc froze, his hand on the door. He stared at Marty, his scientific mind trying to process the impossible. He let Marty in. Together they looked at the DeLorean. Doc was in awe. "It seems," he said, his voice a whisper of shock and excitement, "that I have a brilliant future ahead of me." They had two gigantic problems. The first was getting Marty home. The time machine was out of plutonium. Doc calculated that only a bolt of lightning had enough power. It seemed hopeless until Marty remembered the flyer in his pocket. "Save the clock tower!" he yelled, showing it to Doc. It detailed the exact moment the lightning would strike the clock tower, 10:04 p.m., next Saturday night. They had their power source. They had a plan. But the second problem was far more complicated and delicate. He had to make his parents fall in love. He had to get his painfully shy, awkward father to ask his now infatuated mother to the enchantment under the sea dance. What followed was a week of Marty trying to be a coach and a matchmaker for his own parent. It was a disaster. George could barely speak to Lorraine. Marty tried everything. Finally, in a moment of bizarre inspiration, he put on his radiation suit in the middle of the night, put headphones over George's ears, and blasted rock and roll music. He pretended to be an alien named Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan, warning George that he must ask Lorraine to the dance, or he would melt his brain. The crazy plan worked, George asked her, but now they had to make sure they kissed at the dance. Marty came up with a new plan. He would take Lorraine to the dance in his place, pretend to get fresh with her in the car, and George would come and rescue her, looking like a hero. The night of the dance, the plan immediately went wrong. Lorraine had no interest in being a good girl and started kissing Marty, who pushed her away in horror. "This is all wrong," he said. "It feels like I'm kissing my brother." Just then, the car door was ripped open, but it wasn't George, it was Biff. Angry and drunk, Biff threw Marty out of the car and got in with Lorraine, locking the doors. His friends grabbed Marty and threw him in the trunk of another car. Inside the car, Biff was aggressive and scary. Lorraine was terrified. But then the door was pulled open again. This time, it was George. He had found his courage. "Get your damn hands off her," he said, his voice shaking but firm. Biff laughed and twisted George's arm. But as he pushed Lorraine, something inside George McFly snapped. The lifetime of fear was replaced by a surge of protective rage. He pulled his arm free, clenched his hand into a tight fist, and swung. The punch connected perfectly with Biff's jaw. The big bully crumpled to the ground, unconscious. George McFly was a hero. Lorraine looked at him, her eyes filled with awe and admiration. But the night wasn't over. Inside the dance, Marty had to get off stage after being freed from the trunk, only to find the band's guitar player had sliced his hand open. There would be no music. There would be no slow song for his parents' first kiss. Thinking fast, Marty grabbed the guitar. He knew the song they were supposed to play. He started the gentle melody, and he watched as George and Lorraine met on the dance floor. They moved together, found each other's eyes, and as the music swelled, they leaned in and shared their first kiss. Marty glanced at the photo in his pocket. His brother and sister had reappeared. He was back. The future was safe. Filled with relief and joy, Marty decided to give the kids of 1955 a little treat. "This is an oldie where I come from," he said, and launched into Johnny Be Good, a blistering rock and roll song from the future. He shredded on the guitar, kicking and jumping, lost in the music. The teenagers just stood there, staring, their minds completely blown. The injured guitar player, Marvin Berry, was already on the phone. "Chuck," he yelled, "it's your cousin Marvin. You know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this." His job done, Marty raced from the dance. The storm was here. It was time to go home. He got to the clock tower just as the wind and rain picked up. But when he jumped in the DeLorean, it wouldn't start. High above on the slick, narrow ledge of the clock tower, Doc was fighting to connect a massive cable. A falling tree branch disconnected a key wire on the ground. It was chaos. Finally, the car roared to life. Marty sped down the street, aiming for the wire Doc had stretched across the road. Doc, high above, made a last-second desperate lunge to reconnect the final cable. At exactly 10:04 p.m., the sky exploded. The lightning bolt hit the clock tower, surged down the wire, and into the DeLorean. With a final blinding flash of light, Marty McFly was gone. He reappeared in 1985 with a jolt. He was back, but his relief turned to horror as he remembered Doc. He raced to the mall, now called the Lone Pine Mall, he noticed, and arrived just in time to see the scene play out again. The van, the guns, the shooting. He screamed, running toward his friend's fallen body, sure he was too late. But then Doc sat up. He grinned a little and opened his jacket, revealing a thick bulletproof vest underneath. He pulled out a worn, taped-together letter. "I read the letter you wrote me in 1955, Doc said. "I knew what was going to happen." Marty was so happy he could have cried. His friend was safe. The next morning, Marty woke up, and the world had been repainted in bright colors. The sad, quiet house was gone. It was open, clean, and full of life. His sister was happy. His brother wore a suit to work. His parents came in, dressed for tennis, looking happy and deeply in love. George was no longer a scared man. He was a confident, successful science fiction author holding the first copy of his new book. Biff was there too, but he was waxing George's car, bowing and scraping, and in the driveway sat a beautiful black brand new truck. The truck Marty had dreamed of for years. Jennifer was there to see it. It was a perfect moment. His life wasn't just fixed. It was better than he could have ever imagined. Just as he and Jennifer were about to kiss, a sonic boom shook the neighborhood. The DeLorean, now equipped to fly, appeared out of thin air and crashed into the trash cans. The door opened and Doc jumped out, wearing bizarre silver sunglasses and colorful clothes. "Marty, you've got to come with me," he yelled frantically. "Where, Doc?" "Back to the future." He grabbed a banana peel and some old beer from the trash can and threw it into a new reactor on the back of the car. "We have to do something about your kids." The story wasn't over, but Marty had learned the most important lesson of all. He had seen how one moment of courage could change everything. He finally understood what Doc had tried to tell him. Your destiny isn't written in stone. It's a blank page. Roads? Doc laughed as Jennifer and Marty piled into the flying car. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And with that, the DeLorean lifted into the air, turned, and vanished into the future, leaving only 2 trails of fire hanging in the sky.
Great job on finishing the story. You're one step closer to mastering English. See you in the next video.